And now there are multiple ways for white to continue this game, like f3, bishop to e3 or even bishop to e2, which would lead to the classical variation. But instead, here Karpov chooses the aggressive line. He goes for g4, which is known as Keres attack, preparing to push g5. So that's why to stop this, here black goes for h6. But now you might be shocked that here, however, Karpov goes for g5. Pinning this knight, but it also opens this h file for this rook. And after that, here Karpov goes for bishop to e2, supporting this h-pawn so that he can push this pawn further. And after that, here black also castled long side. And after that, here Karpov goes for e5, attacking this knight. But guys, instead of this move, here white must consider capturing this pawn on d5. This is because after knight takes d5, knight takes d5. And after e takes d5, now comes bishop takes e7, knight takes e7, and now in this position, here white can actually sacrifice his bishop by bishop takes a6. This is because if takes, now comes queen to b4 check, and after king to c8, simply queen takes e7. And with this all, you can see white successfully damaged the safety of black king, and this queen is targeting these weak pawns, and later this rook can jump to d3 and then to c3. With that, this position is completely winning for white. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move e5, okay, so now black goes for knight to f5, asking for knight exchange. But guys, instead of knight to f5, in this position here black can consider this move bishop to a4, creating some pressure over this c2 pawn and this knight on d4. In the next move, black will go for knight to f5 to attack this knight. And suppose if white tries to attack this bishop by playing b3, that will be a huge mistake, because of now black will go for knight to d5, attacking this queen. And suppose if queen to d2, now comes knight to c3 check, king to b2, and after that knight takes d1, rook takes d1, and finally black will defend his bishop. And because all of this, you can see white will end up a rook down, and so that's why this position will be clearly better for black. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move knight to f5, okay, so in this position, rook to d6 by Karpov, bringing this rook into the game, which also stopped this pawn push. And now it's better for black to continue with rook to c8, which targets this c2 pawn. But instead, here black goes for g6. A good move trying to activate this rook, but because we cannot capture with the f pawn due to this undefended bishop. And here white can push this pawn further, but instead, here white decides to capture on g6. And as I said, we can't capture with the pawn, so that's why rook takes g6. And by this you can see black successfully activates his rook. Okay, so now rook to h8 by black, preparing for rook to h2, which stops this, which attacks this bishop. But without worrying, here Karpov goes for a4. He might be preparing for king to a3. And as you can see, here black wants to bring this queen to h4 and then to e1 so that he can infiltrate and attack this bishop. So that's why after seeing this, here Karpov brings back his rook to d2, adding defense to this bishop, and after that, here black decides to bring back his bishop to c8 so that this rook can't give any check and black can freely move this queen. Okay, so after that, here Karpov brings his queen to b6, preparing to push these pawn further, and to stop this, here black brings his queen to c7, asking for queen exchange. An interesting move by Karpov trying to take control over the queen side. And after that, here black goes for rook to h3. Okay, so guys, instead of bishop to d1, here bishop to f1 might be the better option for white, which targets this rook. And now here black must consider pushing these pawns, but instead here black goes for queen to a5. He might want to go to d4 square so that he can create some pressure over these pawns. And after that, here Karpov goes for c5, and in the next move white must go for b4, which attacks this queen. And it's better for black to go back to c7 so that he can keep an eye over these pawns, but instead he goes for rook to h4. Yes, he is targeting this f4 pawn, but here Karpov goes for b4, attacking this queen. Okay, and after that queen to c7, and now white must consider this amazing move b5. This is because suppose if takes, and if black captured on f4 by rook takes f4, that will be a big mistake because of the move b6 trying to attack this queen. And after suppose queen goes to c6, now comes bishop to a4, attacking this queen again. And if queen to c8, queen to d6 check, king to a8, and after that c6, creating extreme pressure over the black position. And now there is a mate in 6 for white, which you have to find. Let me know in the comments if you find the sequence. Okay, so let's go back to our original game. In the actual game, after the move queen to c7, here Karpov missed that amazing move b5, and instead he goes for queen to e3. Basically, he wants to guard this f4 pawn. And now it's better for black to push a5 so that he can target this main pawn chain, but instead he goes for queen to e7. Okay guys, instead of rook to g8, here bishop to c4 might be a better option for black so that he can stop this b pawn from pushing further. And now it's better for white to push this b pawn further, but instead Karpov missed that move, and instead he goes for bishop to c2. But guys, instead of queen to c3, here bishop to b3 would be a better option for white, since he can exchange that bishop, which is very important for black, and by this exchange white can freely move his king. And as I said, this bishop is very important for black, so he shouldn't consider exchanging it. Instead, he should consider pushing a5 to deflect this b pawn and then to capture this c5 pawn by queen takes c5. And now it's better for white to push this a pawn further, but instead he goes for queen to e3. And now here black must consider bringing this queen to h4 with the idea of queen to h1 so that he can attack this king, but instead he goes for rook to c6, asking for rook exchange so that he can open this b file for this queen. And obviously white cannot exchange this rook, but but here Karpov goes for queen to d2, and now he can exchange this rook. And here, to win this game, white has to just find the move a5, and then he can also bring so that he can also bring his king further into the game. But in the actual game, after this move, here Karpov goes for queen to d4, and queen to d4. And to stop this king from going to b5 square, here black must consider king to a6, but instead he goes for queen to h4, and that's a mistake because as you can see, white has these advanced pawns. So to stop this queen must be stayed on this 7th rank. But now, because now Karpov firstly exchanges the rooks. And in this position, the final move by Karpov is king to d5, and here Mikhail Steinberg resigned. This is because suppose if black tries to give some checks like queen to a2, simply king to a5, and if queen takes a4, e7, queen to e8, king to d5, queen to g8 check, king to c6, queen to e8 check, king to b6, threatening mate in 1, and to stop this, black has to lose his queen. And after that, you can see it's all over for black. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.